Commander Zethkar walked through the long metal halls of the Valorian warship. His large feet made heavy sounds on the floor. He had fought in many battles across the galaxy. His skin showed the marks of those fights. Today was different from all other days. Today he would tell his leaders something that would shock them. The meeting room was huge and dark. 20 of the most powerful Valorian leaders sat around a big round table. They all looked at Zethkar as he entered. These were the beings who decided which planets to attack and which species to destroy. They had never heard Zethkar say they should avoid a fight. High Admiral Vexthan sat at the head of the table. He had 4 strong arms and sharp teeth. His red eyes looked at Zethkar with interest. Next to him sat Council Member Tassara. She was known for her love of war. Her claws were always sharp and ready. The other members were just as fierce. Zethkar stood in the center of the room. He took a deep breath. What he was about to say would change everything. He had spent weeks thinking about this moment. He knew they would not believe him at first, but he had to try. "Honored Council," Zethkar began. His voice was strong but careful. "I come before you today with a warning. It is about a species. We have been watching. They live on a small blue planet in the Sol system. They call themselves humans." Admiral Vexthan leaned forward. "Humans? The weak beings who barely know how to fly between stars? What could they possibly do to worry us?" Zethkar had expected this reaction. He pressed a button on his wrist device. A big screen appeared in the air above the table. It showed images of Earth and its people. The humans looked small and weak, compared to the mighty Valorians. "Look at them," said Council Member Tassara with a laugh. "They have no claws, no armor on their skin, no sharp teeth. They cannot even breathe in space without machines. Why should we fear such pathetic creatures?" Other council members began to laugh too. They pointed at the images and made jokes. Zethkar waited for them to stop. He knew their laughter would not last long. "Honored ones," Zethkar said when the room became quiet again. "I ask you to listen to my full report before you decide. What I have learned about humans will change how you see warfare forever." The Admiral waved his hand. "Very well, Commander. You have served us well in the past. We will listen, but make it quick. We have real threats to discuss." Zethkar nodded. He had prepared for this moment for many days. He knew he had only one chance to convince them. If he failed, the Valorian Empire might make a terrible mistake. 3 months ago, you sent me to study human military power," Zethkar continued. "You wanted to know if they could be a threat to our expansion plans. I took my best team and the fastest ship. We thought it would be an easy mission." The screen changed to show Zethkar's ship approaching. Earth, it was a small blue and green world that looked peaceful from space. White clouds moved slowly over the surface. It seemed like a quiet, harmless place. We stayed hidden and watched them for many weeks, Zethkar explained. At first we saw what we expected. Humans seemed weak and divided. They fought among themselves constantly. They had small wars happening in many places at the same time. Councilmember Riksthal spoke up. "If they fight each other, they must be easy to defeat. Divided enemies always fall quickly." Zethkar's expression became serious. "That is what I thought too, Honored One, but I was wrong, very wrong." The images on the screen began to change. They showed human soldiers in action. The council members watched with growing interest. These humans moved differently than they expected. They were fast and smart. They worked together in ways that seemed impossible. "Watch this battle," Zethkar said, pointing to the screen. It showed a group of human soldiers led by Captain Jake Morrison. They were outnumbered by their enemies. Their equipment was old and broken. By all logic, they should have been defeated in minutes. The council watched as the humans did something unexpected. Instead of running away or surrendering, they began to fight harder. Captain Morrison led his team through enemy lines using tactics that made no sense. They turned their weakness into strength. They used the enemy's advantages against them. "How did they do that?" asked Admiral Vexthan. His 4 arms were now crossed in confusion. "Their position was hopeless. They should have died." "That is exactly what I said," Zethkar replied. But watch what happens next. The battle continued on the screen. The humans kept fighting even when they were hurt. They helped each other and never gave up. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez coordinated attacks while bleeding from multiple wounds. She spoke calmly into her communication device as explosions happened around her. Notice how they communicate, Zethkar pointed out. Even in the worst moments, they stay calm and organized. They make new plans instantly when old ones fail. They adapt faster than any species I have ever seen. Councilmember Tisara leaned forward. Her attitude was changing from amusement to concern. This could be unusual behavior for just this one group. Surely not all humans fight like this. Zethkar pressed another button. The screen filled with dozens of similar battles from different parts of Earth. In each one, humans showed the same strange behavior. They fought harder when things got worse. They protected each other even when it meant certain death. General Ben Carter, Zethkar said, highlighting one human leader. He commands forces across multiple continents at the same time. Look at how he coordinates 17 different battles while staying calm under pressure. His soldiers trust him completely because he never asked them to do something he would not do himself. The council members watched in silence now. The laughter had stopped completely. They began to see what Zethkar had discovered. These humans were not like any enemy they had faced before. There's more, Zethkar continued, much more. What I have shown you is only the beginning. These humans have created something that defies all military logic. They have turned their entire planet into a training ground for war. Admiral Vexton stood up slowly. His red eyes were wide with disbelief. Are you telling us that we should fear a species that has not even left their own star system? Zethkar looked directly at the Admiral. His voice was steady and sure. Honored Admiral, I am telling you that we should avoid them completely. Not because they are weak, but because they are the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. The silence in the council room was heavy and thick. Admiral Vexton sat back down slowly. His forearms trembled slightly as he processed what Zethkar had just said. The other council members looked at each other with confusion and worry. Council Member Tisara was the first to speak. Commander, you have fought for us for many years. You have never been wrong about enemy strength before. But what you are saying makes no sense. How can beings without natural weapons be dangerous warriors? Zethkar had expected this question. He pressed another button on his device. The screen above them changed to show detailed images of human anatomy. Their bodies looked fragile compared to Valorian physiology. You are right to question this, Zethkar said. When I first studied their biology, I came to the same conclusion. Humans have no claws, no armor plating, no venomous fangs. Their physical strength is average at best. They cannot run as fast as a Zekrith or jump as high as a Thylorian. The images showed humans next to other galactic species. They looked small and helpless in comparison. Their skin was soft and easily damaged. Their bones seemed thin and breakable. So what makes them dangerous? Asked Council Member Rickstall. If they are physically weak, what should we fear? Zethkar's expression became grim. What makes them dangerous is precisely because they are weak. They know they are fragile, so they have spent thousands of years learning how to overcome that weakness. New images appeared on the screen. These showed human military training. Young humans were pushed to their limits and beyond. They carried heavy equipment for long distances. They learned to fight with weapons, with their hands, and with anything they could find. Watch this training exercise, Zethkar said, pointing to a group of human soldiers. They were led by Sergeant Lisa Campbell, a female who looked smaller than her male counterparts. She weighs less than any warrior in this room, yet she completes tasks that would challenge our strongest fighters. The council watched as Lisa Campbell carried a wounded soldier twice her size across difficult terrain. She did not stop even when she was clearly exhausted. Her face showed pain, but her eyes showed determination. She kept moving when others would have given up. This is not unusual behavior, Zethkar continued. This is standard human military training. They prepare for situations where everything goes wrong. They practice fighting when they are tired, hungry, hurt, and outnumbered. Admiral Vexton leaned forward. But surely their technology must compensate for their physical limitations. They must rely on superior weapons and armor. Zethkar shook his head. That is another misconception. Their weapons are often inferior to ours. Their armor is lighter and provides less protection. Yet they consistently defeat enemies with better equipment. The screen showed a battle where human forces faced opponents with advanced technology. The enemy had energy shields and plasma weapons. The humans had simple projectile weapons and basic armor. Logic said the humans should lose quickly. Colonel Nancy Brooks led this engagement, Zethkar explained. Her forces were outnumbered 3-1. The enemy had superior firepower and defensive positions. Watch what she does. The battle unfolded on the screen. Colonel Brooks did not attack the enemy's strength. Instead, she identified their weaknesses and exploited them. She used the terrain to her advantage. She coordinated attacks that confused and disoriented the enemy. Notice how she communicates with her soldiers, Zethkar pointed out. She does not simply give orders. She explains why each action is necessary. Her troops understand the bigger picture so they can make smart decisions on their own. The humans in the battle move like a single organism. When one unit was in trouble, others immediately moved to help. When the original plan failed, they created new plans instantly. They adapted to changing conditions faster than their enemies could react. This is impossible, said Council Member Tisara. No species can coordinate that efficiently during active combat. The stress and chaos should break down their communication. Zethkar nodded. That is what I thought too. But humans train specifically for chaos and stress. They practice making decisions when they cannot think clearly. They learn to trust each other completely. More images appeared showing different human conflicts. In each case, the same patterns emerged. Humans fought harder when conditions became worse. They protected each other at great personal cost. They never seemed to give up, no matter how hopeless the situation became. Private Ryan Stone, Zethkar said, highlighting one young soldier. He volunteered for a mission with zero chance of survival. His job was to delay enemy forces so his comrades could escape. He knew he would die, but he went anyway. The council watched as Ryan Stone fought alone against overwhelming odds. He used every weapon until they broke. When his ammunition ran out, he threw rocks. When the rocks were gone, he used his bare hands. He fought until he could not move anymore. Why would he do that? Asked Council Member Rickstall. It makes no strategic sense to waste a soldier's life for no gain. But there was gain, Zethkar replied. His sacrifice allowed 30 other soldiers to escape and regroup. Those 30 soldiers went on to win a crucial victory. One human died so that many could live and fight another day. The screen showed the aftermath of Ryan Stone's sacrifice. The soldiers he saved did indeed regroup and launch a successful counterattack. They fought with extra determination because their friend had died for them. They won a battle they should have lost. This is their greatest weapon, Zethkar continued. They fight not just for themselves, but for abstract concepts like honor, duty, and love. They will die to protect ideas that cannot be touched or measured. Admiral Vexton stood up and began pacing around the room. His mind was struggling to understand what he was hearing. You are telling us that humans are dangerous because they are willing to die for nothing? Not for nothing, Zethkar corrected. For everything. They fight to protect their families, their friends, their way of life. They fight for the freedom of people they will never meet. They fight for the future of children not yet born. New images showed human civilians during wartime. Dr. Kevin Walsh, a medical officer, treated wounded soldiers from both sides of a conflict. He risked his life to save enemies who had tried to kill him hours before. Helen Parker, a nurse, worked for days without sleep to help the injured. Their medical officer, Dr. Walsh, once said something that explains their entire species, Zethkar quoted. We do not fight because we hate what is in front of us. We fight because we love what is behind us. The council members sat in stunned silence. This concept was alien to them. Valorians fought for conquest, for glory, for the expansion of their empire. The idea of fighting for love was completely foreign. They have weaponized compassion itself, Zethkar continued. Their strongest warriors are those who care the most about protecting others. Their best leaders are those who put their soldiers' lives before their own. Council member Tisara shook her head in disbelief. This cannot be sustainable. Such emotional thinking must make them weak and unpredictable. On the contrary, Zethkar replied, it makes them absolutely predictable in the most terrifying way possible. You can always count on humans to fight harder when their loved ones are threatened. You can always expect them to make impossible sacrifices for each other. The screen showed more examples of human behavior that defied military logic. Soldiers sharing their food with enemies. Commanders risking their lives to save a single wounded soldier. Entire units refusing to retreat when ordered because it would endanger civilians. This makes them unbeatable, Zethkar concluded. When you fight humans, you are not just fighting their military. You are fighting their entire species, their history, their dreams for the future. Every human becomes a warrior when their people are threatened. Admiral Vexton stopped pacing and returned to his seat. His red eyes were now focused entirely on Zethkar. The other council members leaned forward, waiting to hear more. The atmosphere in the room had changed from skepticism to genuine concern. Commander, the Admiral said slowly, you have shown us that humans fight with unusual dedication. But dedication alone cannot win wars. What about their actual combat capabilities? What about their weapons and tactics? Zethkar had been waiting for this question. He pressed a series of buttons on his device. The screen above them filled with detailed combat footage from multiple human conflicts. The images were clear and sharp, showing every detail of human warfare. This is what I found most disturbing, Zethkar began. Humans do not just fight with dedication. They fight with a creativity and adaptability that borders on the impossible. The first video showed Sergeant Lisa Campbell defending a strategic position. She was alone and surrounded by enemy forces. Her ammunition was running low and her communication equipment was damaged. Any reasonable being would surrender or attempt to escape. Watch what she does when her rifle runs out of bullets, Zethkar instructed. The council observed as Lisa Campbell calmly removed the bayonet from her rifle and attached it to a long piece of metal debris. She had created a spear in seconds. When the enemy charged her position, she used the improvised weapon with deadly efficiency. When the spear broke, Zethkar continued, she used the broken pieces as throwing knives. When those were gone, she used rocks. When she ran out of rocks, she used her bare hands. The video showed Lisa Campbell fighting for 72 hours straight. She did not sleep, barely ate, and never retreated from her position. Enemy forces tried multiple times to dislodge her, but she held firm. Her determination seemed to grow stronger as her situation became more hopeless. Council member Tisara watched in amazement. How is she still alive? She should have collapsed from exhaustion hours ago. That is what I thought too, Zethkar replied, but humans have an ability to push their bodies beyond normal limits when necessary. They call it adrenaline, but it is more than that. It is sheer force of will. The screen changed to show another example. Dr. Kevin Walsh was treating wounded soldiers in a field hospital when enemy forces attacked. The building was under heavy fire, with explosions happening all around. Most medical personnel would evacuate immediately. Watch Dr. Walsh, Zethkar said. He continues performing surgery while the battle rages outside. He operates on enemy soldiers even as their comrades try to kill him. The footage showed Dr. Walsh working calmly with his hands steady despite the chaos around him. He saved the life of an enemy officer who had been shooting at human forces just hours before. When asked why, he simply said it was his duty as a healer. This makes no sense, said Council Member Rickstall. Why would he help someone who wants to kill him? Because humans separate the warrior from the person, Zethkar explained. They can fight you to the death, but still see you as worthy of compassion when you are defeated. They have rules for war that they follow even when it puts them at disadvantage. More. Videos played showing human military operations. Colonel Nancy Brooks was coordinating multiple battlefronts simultaneously while under constant pressure. She made complex tactical decisions in seconds, adapting to changing conditions faster than computer systems could calculate optimal responses. Notice how she processes information, Zethkar pointed out. She receives reports from 17 different units, analyzes terrain data, weather patterns, and enemy movements, then creates new battle plans instantly. Her mind works like our most advanced tactical computers, but with intuition and creativity no machine can match. The council watched as Colonel Brooks orchestrated a series of coordinated attacks that should have been impossible to plan and execute. Her forces moved like pieces in a complex game, each unit supporting the others in ways that seemed predetermined, but were actually improvised in real time. This level of coordination requires years of training, observed Admiral Vexthan. Their military education must be extraordinary. That is another disturbing discovery, Zethkar continued. Their military training never stops. Even civilian humans receive basic combat education. Children learn strategy through games, adults practice emergency procedures regularly. Their entire society is organized around the possibility of war. The screen showed human schools where young children learned about tactics and survival. Teachers like Jennifer Brooks taught students how to think strategically and work as teams. The lessons were disguised as games and sports, but they were actually military training. They prepare their population for conflict from birth, Zethkar explained. Every human civilian can become a soldier when needed. Every farmer knows how to use weapons. Every doctor can treat battle wounds. Every engineer can build weapons. New footage showed civilian humans during wartime. Engineer Tony Martinez had converted mining equipment into siege weapons in just days. Pilot Jennifer Brooks flew damaged aircraft with missing controls and broken instruments. Teacher Helen Parker organized evacuation procedures that saved thousands of lives. Watch this engagement, Zethkar said, highlighting a battle where human forces were completely surrounded. General Alex Chun and Admiral Claire Thompson were outnumbered 10-1. Their equipment was inferior, their position was hopeless, and they had no chance of reinforcement. The council watched as the human commanders did something unexpected. Instead of fighting a conventional battle, they turned their entire strategy upside down. They used their own infrastructure as weapons, turning buildings into traps and roads into kill zones. They sacrificed their own cities to defeat the enemy, Zethkar noted. They destroyed their own homes to protect their people. This kind of strategic thinking is completely alien to conventional military doctrine. The battle footage showed humans using tactics that seemed suicidal but were actually brilliant. They lured enemy forces into prepared positions, then collapsed buildings on top of them. They flooded entire districts to stop advancing armies. They turned their own weakness into the enemy's weakness. Captain Michelle Davis led a civilian evacuation that became a counter-assault, Zethkar continued. She organized non-combatants to fight like trained soldiers. Children carried messages through dangerous terrain. Elderly humans operated communication equipment under fire. Council member Tisara shook her head in disbelief. They used their own civilians as military assets? That should make them weaker, not stronger. But it makes them stronger because every human becomes invested in the outcome, Zethkar explained. When everyone fights, everyone has a reason to win. When everyone contributes, everyone shares the responsibility for victory. The screen showed the aftermath of the battle. The human forces had not only survived, but had completely destroyed the superior enemy force. They had captured advanced technology and prisoners. Most importantly, they had protected their civilian population despite impossible odds. The enemy survivors described human warriors as demons who smile while they bleed, Zethkar quoted from intercepted communications. They reported that humans seemed to become more dangerous as their situation became more desperate. Admiral Vexton leaned back in his chair. His expression showed a mixture of fascination and horror. Are you saying that humans fight better? When they are losing, exactly, Zethkar confirmed. When cornered, they do not panic or surrender. They evolve? They become more creative, more determined, more willing to take risks. Their worst moments bring out their best qualities. The final video showed human forces celebrating their victory. But instead of the wild celebration expected after such an unlikely triumph, they were already planning for the next battle. They studied their enemy's tactics, improved their own strategies, and prepared for future conflicts. They learn from every engagement, Zethkar concluded. They never make the same mistake twice. Every defeat teaches them something new. Every victory makes them stronger. They are constantly evolving into better warriors. The council chamber had become completely silent. Every member sat frozen in their seats, absorbing the implications of what Zethkar had revealed. Admiral Vexton finally broke the silence with a question that everyone was thinking. Commander, you have shown us that humans are formidable warriors despite their physical limitations. But surely other species have tried to conquer them. What happened to those who made contact? Zethkar's expression became even more serious. He had been dreading this part of his presentation, but he knew it was necessary. The council needed to understand the full scope of the human threat. That brings me to the most important part of my report, Zethkar said. He pressed another button on his device. I must tell you about the Zekrith Confederation. The screen displayed images of the Zekrith, a powerful military species known throughout the galaxy. They were large, heavily armored beings with advanced technology and a reputation for conquest. Their ships were among the fastest and most heavily armed in known space. The Zekrith Confederation was one of the most successful military powers. In this sector, Zethkar began, they had conquered 47 star systems over the past century. Their technology was superior to ours in many ways. They were experienced, well-equipped, and confident. Council member Tassara nodded. I remember the Zekrith. They were expanding toward our territory before they disappeared. What happened to them? 18 months ago, the Zekrith decided to establish dominance over the Sol system, Zethkar continued. They had observed human activities and reached the same conclusions we initially did. They saw a weak, divided species that would be easy to subjugate. The screen showed Zekrith fleet movements as they approached Earth. Their ships were massive and threatening. They possessed energy shields, plasma weapons, and numerical superiority. Any rational analysis would predict an easy victory for the Zekrith forces. Fleet Commander Vrakthul led the invasion, Zethkar explained. He commanded 200 warships and 50,000 soldiers. The humans had perhaps 20 functional spacecraft and primitive weapons. The Zekrith expected total victory within days. The footage showed the beginning of the Zekrith assault. Their ships approached Earth in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. They sent a surrender demand to the human governments, expecting immediate compliance. The human response surprised everyone, Zethkar continued. Instead of surrendering or panicking, they immediately began coordinating a global defense. Admiral Claire Thompson and General Alex Chun took command of all human forces within hours. The Council watched as humans around the planet mobilized with impossible speed. Military units that had been fighting each other the day before suddenly worked together seamlessly. Civilian facilities were converted to military production in record time. Watch how they respond to the initial attack, Zethkar instructed. The screen showed Zekrith forces beginning their assault on major human cities. Their plasma weapons easily destroyed human defenses. Their shields protected them from return fire. Everything proceeded according to Zekrith military doctrine. Then something unexpected happened. The humans stopped trying to fight the Zekrith ships directly. Instead, they began using tactics that made no sense to conventional military thinking. Captain Michelle Davis was in charge of evacuating the city of New York, Zethkar explained. When the Zekrith attacked, she turned the evacuation into an ambush. She used the fleeing civilians to lure Zekrith ground forces into prepared positions. The footage showed thousands of humans appearing to flee in panic. Zekrith soldiers followed them into the city, expecting easy targets. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a maze of prepared defenses. Buildings collapsed on them. Streets became killing zones. The hunters became the hunted. Engineer Tony Martinez had converted construction equipment into weapons, Zethkar continued. Cranes became artillery platforms. Bulldozers became assault vehicles. Industrial machinery became military assets. Council member Rixtal leaned forward. But surely the Zekrith adapted to these tactics quickly. They were experienced warriors. That is what they thought too, Zethkar replied. But every time they adapted to one human strategy, the humans changed to something completely different. Pilot Jennifer Brooks was flying damaged fighters against superior Zekrith ships. The screen showed aerial combat that defied all logic. Human pilots and inferior aircraft were somehow defeating advanced Zekrith fighters. They used kamikaze tactics, ramming attacks, and impossible maneuvers to level the playing field. Jennifer Brooks flew a fighter with one wing and no functioning weapons, Zethkar described. She used her damaged craft as a guided missile, crashing directly into a Zekrith command ship. Her sacrifice disrupted their entire communication network. The battle footage continued, showing human resistance that grew stronger instead of weaker as the conflict progressed. Every Zekrith victory seemed to make the humans more determined. Every human death inspired others to fight harder. The Zekrith began to realize they had made a terrible mistake, Zethkar continued. Fleet Commander Vrakthul sent desperate messages back to Zekrith High Command requesting immediate reinforcement. The screen displayed intercepted Zekrith communications. The messages showed growing panic and confusion among their forces. They reported that human resistance was unlike anything they had encountered before. One message particularly disturbed the Zekrith leadership, Zethkar said, highlighting a specific transmission. Commander Vrakthul reported that humans seemed to become more dangerous as they suffered more casualties. He said they fought like beings who had nothing left to lose. Admiral Vexthan interrupted. But the Zekrith had superior numbers and technology. How could they lose to a less advanced species? Because humans do not fight like other species, Zethkar replied. When the Zekrith destroyed a human military base, the survivors did not retreat. They scattered into the civilian population and began guerrilla warfare. The footage showed urban combat unlike anything the Council had seen before. Human soldiers appeared from nowhere, struck Zekrith forces, then disappeared again. They used sewers, abandoned buildings, and underground tunnels to move unseen. Colonel Steve Harrison organized resistance cells throughout the occupied territories, Zethkar explained. Every human civilian became a potential spy or saboteur. The Zekrith could not distinguish between combatants and non-combatants because every human was a combatant. The screen showed Zekrith forces becoming increasingly paranoid and isolated. They were taking casualties from unexpected directions. Their supply lines were constantly under attack. Their communication systems were being sabotaged. The humans captured Zekrith technology and reverse-engineered it, Zethkar continued. Within weeks, they were producing improved versions of Zekrith weapons. They turned the invaders' advantages against them. Council member Tizara gasped. They learned to use enemy technology during active combat? That should be impossible. Human engineers worked around the clock to understand Zekrith systems, Zethkar explained. Dr. Helen Parker led teams that dissected captured equipment and created countermeasures. They shared information instantly across their global network. The battle footage showed human forces using modified Zekrith weapons against their creators. The improved designs were more efficient and more deadly than the originals. The students had surpassed their teachers in weeks. The final battle lasted 3 days, Zethkar continued. The remaining Zekrith forces made a desperate attempt to escape. They tried to reach their ships and flee the system. The screen showed the climactic engagement. Human forces, now equipped with captured and improved Zekrith technology, launched a coordinated assault on the invading fleet. They used tactics that combined their natural creativity with stolen advanced weaponry. President. Karen Walsh addressed her people during the darkest moment, Zethkar quoted. She said, "We have not yet begun to fight." They wanted to see what humans are capable of when threatened. Today they will learn that we are capable of anything. The footage showed the systematic destruction of the Zekrith fleet, human forces. That had been nearly defeated just months before were now winning decisively. They captured enemy ships, took prisoners, and secured advanced technology. "What happened to the Zekrith survivors?" asked Admiral Vexton quietly. Zethkar paused before answering. There were no survivors from the invasion force. The few Zekrith who escaped the final battle were hunted down by human special forces. The entire Confederation fleet was destroyed or captured. The Council sat in stunned silence. The Zekrith Confederation had been a major power in the galaxy. The idea that they could be completely eliminated by a single planet species was almost impossible to accept. The humans now possess all Zekrith technology, Zethkar concluded. They have improved upon it and integrated it into their own systems. The species that was barely capable of interstellar flight 18 months ago now has weapons that surpass our own. The weight of Zethkar's revelation settled over the council chamber like a heavy blanket. Admiral Vexen stared at the screen where the last images of the destroyed Zekrith fleet still glowed. His forearms trembled slightly as he processed. The implications of what he had heard. Council member Tisara broke the silence first. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Commander, are you telling us that an entire Confederation fleet was eliminated by a species that had never fought a space battle before?" Zethkar nodded grimly. "Not only eliminated, but completely absorbed. The humans studied every piece of Zekrith technology, improved upon it, and incorporated it into their own military systems. They turned their defeat of the Zekrith into a massive technological advancement." The screen changed to show current human space activities. Where once there had been primitive rockets and simple satellites, now there were sleek warships patrolling the Sol system. The designs were clearly based on Zekrith technology, but they had been modified and improved. "These ships," Zethkar explained, pointing to the human fleet, "are faster and more heavily armed than the original Zekrith vessels. The humans have taken 18 months to surpass centuries of Zekrith development." Council member Rikstal leaned forward. "How is such rapid advancement possible? Technology development should take decades, not months." "Because humans do not approach problems the way other species do," Zethkar replied. "When faced with superior enemy technology, most species try to develop counters or defenses. Humans study the technology until they understand it completely, then they make it better." The screen showed human research facilities where captured Zekrith equipment was being analyzed by teams of scientists and engineers. Dr. Helen Parker led one such team, working alongside former enemies who had chosen to cooperate rather than face execution. "Notice how they treat their former enemies," Zethkar pointed out. The surviving Zekrith scientists and engineers were given a choice: help improve their technology or face trial for war crimes. Most chose to cooperate. The footage showed humans and Zekrith working side by side in research laboratories. The former enemies were developing new weapon systems that combined the best of both technologies. It was a level of integration that should have taken years to achieve. "They do not simply defeat their enemies," Zethkar continued, "they convert them. They turn opposition into cooperation. They make their conquered foes into allies." Admiral Vexton stood up slowly, his red eyes fixed on the screen. "Commander, you have shown us much today. But I must ask the crucial question. What do you recommend we do about this human threat?" Zethkar had been preparing for this moment. Throughout his entire presentation, he took a deep breath and looked directly at each council member in turn. What he was about to propose went against everything the Valorian Empire represented. "Honored Council," Zethkar began, his voice steady and sure, "I recommend that we establish a complete quarantine around the Sol system. We must declare human space forbiddance territory for all Valorian forces and allied species." The council members exchanged shocked glances. In the entire history of the Valorian Empire, they had never retreated from a potential enemy. They had never declared any territory off limits due to fear. You want us to run away? Council member Tusara asked, her voice filled with disbelief. The mighty Valorian Empire should hide from a single planet species? Not hide, Zethkar corrected. Survive? There is a difference between tactical withdrawal and cowardice. What I am proposing is a strategic decision based on careful analysis of enemy capabilities. He pressed another button on his device. The screen displayed a map of the local galactic sector, showing human space as a small blue dot surrounded by vast territories controlled by various alien empires. Look at this map, Zethkar instructed. Human space appears insignificant compared to our holdings. But that small blue dot represents the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. The map began to change, showing projected human expansion over the next few years. The blue area grew larger as the humans established colonies and built more ships. Their territory expanded slowly but steadily outward from Earth. Based on their current rate of technological advancement, Zethkar explained, humans will achieve faster-than-light travel within 5 years. They will establish their first colony worlds within 10 years. They will become a major galactic power within 20 years. Council member Rickstall shook his head. Surely we could stop their expansion before it becomes a threat. We could strike now while they are still contained to one system. Zethkar's expression became even more serious. Honored One, that is exactly the kind of thinking that doomed Zekrith. They believe they could defeat humans quickly and easily. They learned too late that attacking humans is the worst possible mistake any species can make. The screen showed intercepted human communications from after the Zekrith War. Military leaders like Colonel Steve Harrison and General Alex Chun were already planning for future conflicts. They were studying other galactic species and developing countermeasures for potential threats. The humans are now aware that they are not alone in the galaxy, Zethkar continued. They know that other species pose potential threats to their survival. They are preparing for wars that have not yet begun. The footage showed human military exercises that incorporated lessons learned from fighting the Zekrith. They were practicing tactics for different types of alien enemies. They were developing weapons designed to counter various galactic technologies. President Karen Walsh issued a statement to her people after the Zekrith defeat, Zethkar quoted. She said, "We have learned that we are not alone in the universe, and we have learned that not all alien species come in peace. We must be prepared to defend ourselves against any threat." Admiral Vexton began pacing around the room again. His mind was struggling to accept what he was hearing. The idea of avoiding conflict went against every instinct the Valorians possessed. "But, Commander," the Admiral said, "if we declare their space forbiddance, other species will think we are weak. Our reputation as warriors will be damaged." "Our reputation will survive," Zethkar replied. "But our species might not if we make the mistake of attacking humans. I would rather be seen as cautious than be remembered as extinct." The screen displayed the final piece of evidence Zethkar had saved for this moment. It was a recording of human military leaders discussing their future plans. The conversation had been intercepted from a secure human communication channel. "Listen to this exchange between their military commanders," Zethkar instructed. The recording played in the council chamber. Colonel Steve Harrison's voice came through the speakers clearly. "We need to establish early warning systems throughout the sector. If another species decides to attack us, we cannot allow them to achieve surprise," General Alex Chun responded. "Agreed. We should also begin developing long-range weapons capable of striking targets outside our system. If someone threatens Earth, we need to be able to hit them before they reach us." Admiral Claire Thompson added, "We should consider establishing forward bases in nearby systems. Defensive positions that can serve as early warning posts and supply depots." The recording continued for several minutes, outlining human plans for system defense and expansion. Their strategies were sophisticated and far-reaching. They were thinking decades ahead and preparing for multiple contingencies. They are not content to simply defend their homeworld, Sethkar explained when the recording ended. They are planning to project military power throughout this entire sector. Of space, Council member Tessara looked troubled. If they expand their influence, they will eventually come into contact with our territory. Conflict will be inevitable. Perhaps, Sethkar agreed. But by then, they will be even more powerful than they are now. If we must face humans in battle, it should be on our terms, not theirs. The screen showed Sethkar's final recommendation in clear, simple text. Establish quarantine zone around Sol system. Declare human space forbidden to all Valorian forces. Issue galaxy-wide warning about human military capabilities. This is my formal recommendation, Sethkar stated. We should not attack humans. We should not approach their territory. We should warn other species about the danger they represent. Admiral Vexton stopped pacing and faced the council. Members of the War Council, you have heard Commander Sethkar's report. We must now vote on his recommendation. The voting was swift and unanimous. Every council member agreed that humans represented too great a risk to engage in combat. The formal warning would be issued immediately. The motion is approved, Admiral Vexton announced. All Valorian forces will avoid human space. We will issue warnings to allied species about the human threat. As the council meeting concluded, Sethkar offered one final observation. Honored Council, the humans have a saying that explains their entire philosophy. It is better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. They have made their entire world a garden tended by warriors. The formal warning was transmitted across the galaxy within hours. By order of the Valorian High War Council, all species are advised to maintain strict non-interference protocols regarding the Sol system and its dominant species, humanity. They are not hostile, but they are absolutely lethal when threatened.